Viewers, welcome everybody back to section 1. Welcome to section 1. We took a bit of a break. Of course, we had some religious festivities the last couple of weekends, and now we are back to deal with the issues that continuously affect our sovereign democratic state. Unfortunately, again, Stefan isn't here, but he should be back in studio next week. Interesting show today, because I think today what we need to do is to get into some politics. It's not usual that I do that because, you know, the original intention of this show has always been to deal with generally legal issues, rule of law issues, issues about democracy, but we can't realistically talk about democracy if we aren't talking about our political parties. And the United National Congress is a political party. It is the opposition of Trinidad and Tobago, and it has a very important role in a democracy. It forms a very important part of our democratic architecture. And therefore, the performance, the image, the outlook, the decisions of the United National Congress and its conduct in Parliament, I think, plays a very important part in our democracy. And sometimes it deserves our scrutiny. Now, I make no bones about it. I am a supporter of the United National Congress. I have always supported them, and I play somewhat of an active role in supporting them. I always advocate for them. I think that they are the best party, so I declare my bias. But, I mean, perhaps surprisingly, today I am going to criticize them a bit because of something that I saw in Parliament, which really disturbed me. It's an unfortunate display by a member of Parliament in the Parliament, seemingly trying to usher people on. You know what? Let's look at the video. I don't want to spoil anybody's perception. Keep your eye on MP Padarat, who is sitting next to Ms. Prasad Bisesa, the opposition leader. Keep your eye on him and look at his actions. Josh, I want you to play it, and let's play it again, and let's play it again. It's a short clip. Let's play it about 3 times, because I want the viewers to look at what this MP's role in the Parliament is. I thought an MP's role was to debate, was to articulate your point of view, was to represent your constituency, was to take the views of your constituency and bring it to Parliament on different bills and pieces of legislation, and to offer very strong and fervent views on behalf of your constituents. Let's look at the very strong and fervent views that are being offered in this video.
Hear them. Across the country, people are protesting every day for better roads. It is as though we are in 1924, under the time of colonial neglect. And hear them. Across the country, people are protesting every day for better roads. It is as though we are in 1924, under the time of colonial neglect. And hear them. Across the country, people are protesting every day for better roads. It is as though we are in 1924, under the time of colonial neglect. And
Josh, no, I'm asking you to clap for me, because, or knock your desk. Somebody. Anybody? Anybody wants to do it for me? Nobody in the studio? This seems to be the magic. This seems to be the magic wand, right? You could talk whatever you want, but once you do this, you have to. That is not the role of an MP, sir. With all due respect, it could never be the role of an MP. You need to calm down. First of all, that is, by any standard, extremely unprofessional. If you, as a member of Parliament, member of the United National Congress, the member of a team, a cricket team, a sports team, a all-fours team, if you are unhappy with the way your colleague is doing something or colleagues are doing something, then the professional thing to do, sir, is to A, bring it to the attention of the leader. You go up the chain, the chief whip. B, have a quiet word with them and say, you think that this should happen. Or C, find some other way of discreetly communicating your displeasure with their actions. Pull them aside and talk to them quiet. Don't embarrass the entire party and the entire 300,000 odd people that voted for the United National Congress, or your constituents, by doing this. What is that? And secondly, is that the way we speak to women in our party? I notice you're gesturing to MP Michelle Benjamin and MP Vandana Mohit. Two very hardworking MPs. That's the way you speak to them? That's how we speak to women in our party? No, have some respect. Respect women. You don't do that. If you have to speak to them, or if you have to express a view that you are not happy with the way they are talking, then have a quiet word with them. Or bring it up in a caucus or something like that. Don't embarrass them in public like that. Thirdly, wasn't there some talk a couple weeks ago about the former leader treating supporters like sheep? You were behaving like some kind of shepherd there. Well, first of all, I don't know. Anyway, let me just say that. But what is this? Isn't that treating people like sheep? Telling them they have to beat the dust? Ms. Prasad Bissessa, with all due respect, is an experienced politician, and she's an articulate lady when she needs to be. She doesn't need your help, sir, in encouraging the other MPs to support her by desk thumping. She does not need your assistance. And that is not your role. If anybody were to do this, I would think it would have been the chief whip. That's what he is there for. But that can't be your role, sir. So please, exercise some decorum in the parliament, in the people's parliament. Exercise some decorum on behalf of the opposition. And exercise some decorum on behalf of your constituents. They didn't put you there to behave like that. Really, I mean that had to be sad, very sad. Anyway, let's move on from Josh, play that video for me one more time. I want people to look at this in case I am going crazy and this is somehow the behavior that is expected. Play it one more time.
We hear them. Across the country, people are protesting every day for better roads. It is as though we are in 1924, under the time of colonial neglect.
Don't do it again. We at Section 1 are going to be looking at your conduct in Parliament. If you do it again, we're highlighting it here again. Do not do it again, because it seems that nobody is holding that kind of behavior to account, so maybe I need to hold it to account here. Let people see and expose it. And maybe that's the way we'll deal with it. All right, let's move on. Now, another topic I want to touch on, Josh, I don't know, are the pictures ready? Right, so when I cue you, you'll bring it up. Another interesting topic that is coming up in the stratosphere of the United National Congress, in the lexicon of writing, in the universe of discourse in the party, is that there is going to be, or some people are advocating for, deferral of the internal election in the United National Congress. Let me be very clear. The United National Congress is a political party. As far as I am aware, I am a member. It is a democratic party. By a democratic party, what we mean is the United National Congress embraces principles of democracy, it embraces the rule of law, and it embraces democratic processes. Perhaps the main and the most important process, not the only one, but perhaps the main process in any democratic organization is an electoral process whereby the members are allowed to choose the persons that lead them. Now, the United National Congress has several leadership positions. It has political leader, it has 3 deputy political leaders, and then you have executive positions such as chairman, vice chairman, party officer, party organizer, elections officer, Tobago rep, representatives of different districts, Southeast coordinator, Northeast coordinator, different coordinators. That forms the leadership of the party. You have the leader, you have 3 DPLs, and then you have an executive. Each of these positions are elected. There is, according to the Constitution of the United National Congress, an internal election that is to be held sometime in June of this year. It has to be held. And anybody who is suggesting that elections should not be held when elections are due can't be UNC. It is the UNC's philosophy. It is one of the things that attracted me as a young lawyer to the party. Very early on, it is the UNC's policy that elections must be held when elections are due. Many years ago, former Prime Minister Patrick Manning kept putting off the local government election, and the United National Congress, as a strong opposition party, opposed that with all of its might, political might. And quite recently, the new incarnation of the People's National Movement attempted to defer the election, and the United National Congress and an activist, Mr. Ravi Balgobin Maraj, took the PNM and the government to the Privy Council to ensure that elections are held when elections are due. That is the philosophy of the United National Congress. Elections must be held when elections are constitutionally due. Let me say it one more time. Elections must be held when elections are constitutionally due. Asking people to support me now for saying that, right? Because apparently that's the way. Elections have to be held. So if elections are due and scheduled to be called according to our party's constitution in June, then I expect that every single member and every single current NATEX and the leader and the DPLs are going to advocate in accordance with UNC policy that the internal elections must be called when it is due. Now, there are some who say, well, you can't have an internal election when the general elections are due. Ooh, wow, were you around in 2010? In 2010, an internal election was held, and only 4 months later, a general election was held. And the United National Congress and its partners won handsomely. So there's no prejudice. There could be no prejudice. Secondly, this is not an election year. According to the national constitution, elections are due in 2025. So anybody arguing that you should not call an internal election now because general elections are due, you must know Keith Rowley personally, or you must be in the PNM. Because it is only the Prime Minister who has the prerogative to call an early election. So if you are saying elections are going to be called this year, so no internal elections, then you're probably a member of the People's National Movement. Or you are Dr. Keith Rowley. Or you're an acolyte of Dr. Keith Rowley, the Prime Minister. So that argument fails. Thirdly, apart from our expressed policy and our expressed position on holding elections when they are due, right? The Constitution of the United National Congress is built upon very fundamental principles of democracy, which all go towards and all support the holding of elections when it is due, or regular, free and fair elections. And in case many of you don't have this constitution of the UNC, I've screenshotted that part. Just let's put it up. This is the preamble or the introduction to the United National Congress's constitution. Let us read. And I've highlighted it there. To foster the ethos, substance, and processes of democracy in all spheres. What does processes of democracy in all spheres? What could that mean? The major process of democracy is elections. And in particular, to promote unrestricted freedom of citizens to participate in the choice of their representatives. To participate in the choice of their representatives. How do you participate in the choice of your representatives? Do we play pick-a-pan? Do we play merry-go-round the Roseberry Bush? Right? Or the farmer in the dell? No. You go and you vote. You participate in elections. That is how you participate in the choice of their representatives. That is how a democracy works. And to encourage the implementation of principles of economic and industrial democracy and the most widespread ownership of economic assets. And it is your elected leaders that must do that. Next page, Josh. To struggle against, one of my favorite lines in all constitutions anyway, to struggle against any tendency towards authoritarianism, autocracy, and dictatorship, and to promote a viable diffusion of centers of power and decision making as a check against the concentration and abuse of power. Let's take it slowly. To struggle against, that means to resist, to fight, to argue against any tendency towards authoritarianism. You know what authoritarianism, autocracy, and dictatorship is? No elections. So anybody who is advocating for no elections or deferring of elections is an autocrat. They are a dictator. They are an authoritarian. So we as members subscribe to a constitution to ensure that we struggle against that. We must struggle against that. So we must struggle and fight and advocate against anybody who says that the elections must not be called when it is due. Next one. And how do you have a concentration and abuse of power? When people remain in office without an election. That is how you have abuse of power. And the next. To promote active citizen involvement at all levels of decision making as the foundation for a participatory democracy. To promote active, come back to me, Josh. Let me read it. To promote active citizen involvement at all levels of decision making as the foundation for a participatory democracy and as a prerequisite for self-reliant development. What does that mean? To promote active citizen involvement at all levels. The very fundamental way in which citizens participate in decision making is by choosing the decision makers. And by choosing how do you choose your decision makers in your party? Through an election. As the foundation for a participatory democracy. What is a participatory democracy? That is where you, the members or the citizens, participate in the democracy. And you do that through an electoral process by choosing your leaders. Yes, there are other ways. You have consultation, you have, proposals, you can have your party groups, you can have these things, you can have demonstrations, freedom of expression. But the main way in which you participate in a democracy is by electing your leaders who you think will represent you and advocate your point of view. And that is a democracy. And anybody who is telling you or is coming to argue, and I get serious with this one, this is not about not liking anybody in particular. This is not about supporting anybody in particular. And this is not about saying that anybody must go or anybody should step down. I am about principle. Because if the UNC, the opposition, cannot get it right, in opposition, the population is not going to think that you can get it right in government. Think about it. Think about it. If you hiring, let's say, a contractor and he did a shoddy job with your neighbor house and a shoddy job with your other neighbor house, are you going to hire him to fix your house? Or even worse yet, if the contractor you want to hire, if his house has shoddy work, leaking roof, bad foundation, wall ain't paying good, he can't fix his own house, you're going to bring him to fix your house? No. Of course not. And the population is going to judge you and judge the UNC on how it conducts its own affairs. And especially when it comes to treating with their own constitution. If you don't respect your own constitution, how is the population going to believe that you are going to respect the national constitution? And even worse, how do you have the moral authority to hold the PNM to account, the government to account? How do you criticize them for breaching the constitution when you aren't following your own constitution? Right? You see how it connects? So let's not play the fool, right? Let's not play the fool, whoever these advocates of dictatorship are, and that's what I'm calling them. Whoever these people are who are spreading the talk, because I saw my good friend Mr. Victor Roberts have to come out and say elections must be called when elections are due. I saw an article today in the papers where an MP is saying elections must be called. So I'm getting the feeling that there are some people who are sitting or attempting to put off the elections, the internal elections in the United National Congress. That must not happen. And again, this is not about not liking anybody and say, the point is you have to follow your constitution. Anybody, go and vote for who you want. But make sure that elections are held when elections are due. And another thing, I see that they are now screening candidates. So you have an ATEX that is about to expire, you have a leadership that is about to expire, and they have taken it upon themselves, to decide who will be the next candidates in the general elections of 2025. Your term is more or less up. It expires in June of this year, the current leadership of the United National Congress. And you want to rush and do screening just before? And what, pick yourselves? Because you have about 15 positions on NATEX, or 14. So you're going to pick yourselves, right, to be the next candidates in 2025. And then what if you lose what if you aren't successful in your internal elections? You're binding the next leaders to you being, no, that it doesn't work like that. It really should not work like that. There should be a fresh election. The membership of the party should decide who its leaders are in the United National Congress. And when it decides that, then the party has the moral, political, and democratic authority to decide who are the next candidates. Josh, let's take a break. Welcome back to section 1, everyone. Welcome back to section 1. I wanted to get into a little bit of moving away from the politics a little bit. Well, staying with the politics, but maybe away from the UNC politics. Tomorrow there will be a debate on a property tax amendment bill. I know everybody is concerned about the property tax. I think that the most troubling thing for the majority of the population has to be the imposition of what seems to be very unfair tax rates and inconsistent, because I have heard reports and people have come to see me professionally where you have your neighbor being assessed a certain way. I am assessed differently. There are some people who are getting 2 notices for the very same property at different rates. There was a article on the papers, I believe this week, where one person in what obviously was not a fabulous looking property, no disrespect at all, being taxed a ginormous or enormous rate of tax, which really shows that it seems that the government is being very arbitrary in the way it is taxing citizens of this country. The problem is, the root of the problem seems to be a valuation issue. Valuation of a property is not an arbitrary thing. Valuation of a property is a very serious study and science, based on square footage, based on the market demand, based on amenities in the area, based on access to the property, based on the neighborhood, based on the actual property, the amount of rooms, buildings, different things in the property itself, well maintained, how much money was spent. It's a science. We have to deal with it in law all the time. And what appears to be happening is that you just have people going out and doing what they call curbside valuations, and random valuations which make very little sense. So we really need to get a hold of this property tax. Now, one of the interesting things that came out is that, again, the United National Congress, to be fair to them, they've always advocated on the abolishing of the property tax. It should be abolished, or it should be reformed, or there should be a fair valuation system implemented to ensure that the property tax is done in a professional and mature way. I mean, it seems that it is here to stay. If another government comes into power, they can decide if they want to abolish it or not. But then I found it very strange, because I saw an article this week, I think today, an article today, in the Guardian newspaper. And let me read it. The headline is, I won't call the chairman, but from a UNC corporation, chairman, reduction in property tax will affect planned properties. Now, the problem here is consistency in messaging. If the opposition is against the property tax, then you can't be at the same time advocating for the property tax or being critical of a reduction in the tax. Now, I understand what the goodly chairman may be saying, is that a budget was set, it was predicated on a certain amount of income coming in, and you would have set up your project based on that income, and now with the drop in percentage, because the government is coming tomorrow to drop the percentage of property tax from 3% to 2%, now with the drop, there's going to be less income collected, and it may affect your delivery of projects. Okay, I understand that. But you're going to confuse the population in your messaging. If your messaging is no property tax, then you cannot in the same breath be saying that you want to oppose the drop in percentage from 3% to 2%. Because by advocating for no property tax, you are essentially saying that people should not pay property tax or should not pay a lot of property tax. Because you had land and building tax prior to this, which was very low. So you can't come now and argue in any intelligible way that it should be dropped from 3% to 2%, that you're against the drop from 3% to 2% for whatever reason, budgeting, projects, it doesn't matter. The messaging is inconsistent and bad, and unfortunately, maybe what we were speaking about earlier, that has to do with leadership. Strong, effective, consistent, well-planned leadership would ensure that all organs of the opposition, be it the chairman, be it the councillors, be it the leaders, be it the MPs, be it the senators, are singing from the same hymn book, as they say. Consistent messaging. And if you aren't giving consistent messaging, you're confusing not only your supporters, you're confusing the population. And the population, one thing the population does not want is indecisiveness. They don't want to wake up today with one decision and tomorrow with another. You have to be consistent. So that is bad. But moving into what the actual bill is tomorrow, I understand that they're going to drop 3% to 2%, so I suppose that's a good thing. One of the bad things that I've noticed in the bill is that the minister is coming to arrogate unto himself power to extend deadlines whenever he wants. He's going to move that from, I believe, positive resolution to negative resolution or something like that. Essentially what that means is less parliamentary scrutiny. That can't be right. I think if you're going to fiddle and meddle with the legislation, you should come to Parliament and do it. Don't give yourself the power to do it by way of order without coming to Parliament, or by negative resolution where you have to be called to Parliament to explain your decision. That to me doesn't make sense. This is too important a bill. It's a taxing statute, which means it directly impacts people's income and quality of life, and therefore you ought not to do it. It has to be wrong. And really, the population should demand that the government not tinker with this bill. But again, the population has to demand this, or one of the main ways it can demand this is through the opposition. But if the opposition messaging is not good or inconsistent or confusing, if on the one hand you're saying no tax and on the other hand you're saying you want to oppose the drop from 3% tax to 2% tax, you're not inspiring much confidence in people to get on board and fight your cause, or to give you the population support, to give you the support needed to really go at the government and oppose property tax generally. Because it also seems like you're accepting there should be a tax at a higher rate as opposed to the lower rate that the government is coming with. So you need to get your act together a little bit there in terms of the property tax. The government needs to get its act together. First of all, the government and the PNM administration are absolutely wrong in the way they're doing and rolling out this tax. And I encourage everybody, if you are unhappy with your tax, appeal. There is an appeal process. You can simply do up a form or a letter and say, there's a form there, you can simply do it up and say, I wish to appeal. The valuation is arbitrary, the valuation is unfair because my neighbors are less taxed. If you know it is arbitrary, it is excessive, it is disproportionate, use those types of phrases. And go and challenge them. Get a lawyer, get somebody to represent you, or go yourself and argue it. Many of us understand property. Many of us understand property and valuation, and you're entitled to go and argue for yourself. So do it. Get in the habit as a citizen in a democracy of participating in the decisions that affect you. And this is a decision that affects you directly because it takes income and taxation from your earnings. So get in the habit of challenging. Get in the habit of demanding answers. Request documentation. Request the basis for the valuation. Say that you want to see the notes that the valuator made when he visited your house. You want to see what his jottings were. Lawyers call it contemporaneous documentation. Ask for disclosure of all contemporaneous documentation when persons were assessing your house. Ask for it. Demand it. File your Freedom of Information requests. You have the tools as citizens to fight this in a very deliberate way. And perhaps this is what Mr. Padarat should have been doing instead of that. What he should have been doing is helping his constituents fill out valuation objections and appeals, right? Train a few people, bring in a few lawyers, do a legal aid clinic on it and assist people in your constituency in challenging the issues that affect them. And when you do that, maybe you wouldn't have to, okay? Maybe, right? Josh, quick break and we come back. Last topic. Right, final topic for the show. I saw a very pleasant article. Again, I think today is UNC Day, we'll call it. Put up this. I was very pleased, I won't say surprised, but I was very pleased to read this. Today, it seems to be an interview with the Mayaro MP, Mr. Rushton Parry. And he says, if I'm called, I will lead. Mr. Rushton Parry, MP for Mayaro, if I am called, I will lead. And I would encourage everybody to read the article, read some of his views, some of the answers to his questions. You can come back. Some of the answers to the very informative questions, well, I should say, in drilling questions that were asked of him. He gave very good answers, I think. He impressed me. Again, full disclosure, MP Parry is someone who I know very well, very close, very decent, hardworking man, self-made man, businessman, very successful businesses on his own, from his own efforts, good stock. I know his dad to be a very strict policeman. In fact, some of the older lawyers know his father well as a very strict and decent policeman in the Mayaro area. His mom is a businesswoman. If you know his wife and his daughter is very decent women. So I do think he is somebody that the membership could look at when this next election comes up, regardless of whatever position he puts himself up for. It's a very bold step. But the more important point is I am an advocate for free speech and the expression of opinion and views. That is the one thing out of everything I stand for. And if MP Parry, as we are approaching an internal election in June, thinks that he is someone who is willing to lead and can offer the membership and the country something, then he is entitled to say so, and he is entitled to make his case without disrespecting the party. And I don't think, when you read that article, he has been very careful not to disrespect the party. In fact, it was pointed out in the article that some other persons in the party attempted to disrespect him for advocating a position or for saying that he's interested in leadership or well, I don't think he said he's interested in it, but saying that he is interested in assisting the party. And I think that is wrong. If it is MP Parry is interested in any leadership position, then he is entitled to do it as a member of the party. And all of this rumor they're spreading about he was PNM, he debunks that. MP Parry has never been a member of the PNM. He says so. If anybody has any evidence, well, come forward with it. So all of that rumor mongering is nonsense. MP Parry is a good, decent, hardworking UNC member, an excellent MP, excellent family man, brilliant man. When you hear him speak economics, when you hear him speak industry, when you hear him speak on any topic, he does so with ease and command of facts. Command of facts. And when MP Parry speaks, nobody needs to do. Nobody needs to do that. So MP Padarat, you won't be needed when MP Parry speaks, with all due respect, just jesting a little bit. But when MP Parry speaks, it's really, really articulate and fact-driven. And I'm not overly advocating for him, but the point of it is, and it springs back to this issue with wanting to put off these NATEX elections. I hope I am wrong. I hope in June, I don't have to come here and get on bad and criticize the UNC and call them dictators because they have put off the internal elections. That can't be right. Every single member, if you are looking at this program, if you come in contact with your councillor, if you come in contact with your alderman, if you come in contact with your MP, if you come in contact with your street captain, if you come in contact with your activists, I want you to tell them to advocate on your behalf that elections must be called when elections are due, because that is the UNC way. If you see anybody in any kind of leadership position in the party as a member, it is your duty. Don't think you can't make a difference, you know. You sit down watching the show, you have your little tea, and you're watching and you feel, well, I'm just a member. I don't see. You must see the councillor walking in the road. And if some of you have the time, pick up the phone and call them And I know plenty of you on WhatsApp groups too. WhatsApp, put it. Let them know that the membership of the party wants NATEX elections when it is due in June. Everybody has a responsibility. If we can't fight for democracy in our party, we can't fight for it nationally. I put myself on the line. I have lost things because I have advocated very public positions against the government. I will not stand for dictatorship in the party that I love. If I get up and I fight and I file cases and put my life and my family's risk and my family's lives at risk to fight dictatorship in the government and get advantage and get clients taken and briefs taken away from me, etc., and face all kind of prejudice because I fight for democracy in our country, you think I go to sit and watch dictatorship in the party that I come from? Never. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen on my watch. It's not going to happen. So with those few words, hopefully next week we're back to law and we can leave the politics aside. Everybody, take care.